Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome back to ZEFE Today's Opening. In this edition, I'll be talking with GERKE WITTEVEEN, CEO of NN Pensii, the largest mandatory private pension fund, Pillar 2 in Romania. Mr. Witteveen, good morning. I'm glad to have you with us.
Good morning. Thank you for the invitation.
I would start our discussion with a general question. How was 2023 for Pillar 2?
2023 was quite an extraordinary year, I would say, for 2020 for Pillar 2 system. It's been a system that's been in place for 15 years, and last year the returns that the funds made was 18%, which is an absolute record for all those 15 years, almost 18%. And also, if you compare that to the inflation, which was of course not very low, but it's still almost double the inflation that we had. So the value that we managed to create for our investment for the participants was very good. I think also if you looked at in a long-term perspective, we have a return over 15 years of 7.4%, 7.5%, 7.8%, depending on how you measure, against an average inflation of 4.3%. So typically we manage as pension funds to make a lot more returns than the inflation, but last year was really exceptional. It also means that the overall funds, so the total of all the pension funds together, the assets they manage has grown to more than 125 billion RON last year, which is a growth of more than 30%, 31.7% to be precise, compared to a year ago. So on top of those 18% investment returns, you also have, of course, the contributions of people coming in. So in total, the growth of the pension system has been really significant, which means in the end, the expected pension that people get at the end of the period when they reach the pensioner's age is set to, has grown quite considerably based on last year's results. So it was a very good year for the system.
Okay, and how was 2023 for NN Pensii, if we are talking about participants, net assets, profit, etc.?
Yes, so of course the market trends for NN were not that dissimilar, so the returns were more or less similar. NN has 2.1 million participants out of the total 8.1 million participants that we reached last year. So being more than a quarter of the market, and if you look at the assets under management, it's even 34% of the market. The market trends are also reflected in our performance, so we also had a very good year. So we now manage 43 billion RON of assets, which is also 30% up compared to the year before. And I think, again, our investment strategy, which we put in place, is more focused on long-term investment returns. Because for pensioners, you don't invest for 1 year or for 2 years, you invest for decades, from the moment they start contributing to the moment they go on pensions. So while we're, of course, very happy with the 1-year performance and seeing that growth, I think we also look at the things more in a long-term perspective. So do we, over the course of 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, give the returns that people would expect? And also there, I'm very happy to say that NN is at the top of the pension funds in terms of the return they have achieved. So our long-term strategy, which is really about stability and constant returns that we can give to the participants, really paid off, not only last year, but basically all the years in the past as well.
What supported the performance of Pillar 2 overall and of NN Pensii specifically?
Yeah, if you look at the financial markets last year, there were basically 2 effects. Stock markets have performed really, really well. So the equities we invest in, they have performed really well. If you look at European equities, they grew by between 20 and 25% in price. If you look at the Romanian equities, where we are invested much more than in the international markets, they grew almost 40% on average. So that's a huge return. The second big factor is actually that the interest rates went down, which makes the bonds more valuable. So the returns on the bond markets were also 15%, roughly speaking, last year. So if you get 15% on all your bonds and then between 20 and 40% on all your equities, you end up with 18% return. So basically, from an investment market point of view, I would say last year was quite exceptional because everything moved in the positive area, which is not the case every year, obviously. And then yes, we have the participants who keep contributing. So also just the contributions coming in helped us to grow the fund a lot. But performance-wise, it's the combination of lower interest rates and the stock markets performing very well.
Yeah, I know you had record profits last year. I wanted to ask you, what is the outlook for government bonds this year?
Nobody has a crystal ball, huh? So we will see. But if we look from the first month and a half, 2 months of this year, we all know that the government has a financing need. There is a government deficit that needs to be financed. But if we look at the recent auctions that the Ministry of Finance have done, there was really a high demand. So not only from pension funds, but also from local investors, international investors. So the ability of the Romanian government to borrow money and to issue bonds is still very strong. If you then also take into account that inflation is expected to still go down, that's at least what all the macroeconomic forecasters almost unanimously say, which could lead to further rate cuts in the end also. That would mean that the bonds would probably, if the interest rates go down, the bonds we have in the portfolio become more valuable. There are new bonds on the market which should be able to be financed by the Romanian government at a realistic but still attractive yield. Play out as we expect. But like any time with investment advice, anything I say is no guarantee for the future. We still live in a world, I think, where there's lots of uncertainty on many fronts, from elections locally, globally, conflicts going on, especially in the Middle East, where it's always about the oil. So there are also some, always risks in the market. But the way it looks today, we're looking for a very solid year in 2024.
You mentioned earlier about participants. How many participants benefited from so far from the Pillar 2 pension, and how and when can Romanians receive the money in their account?
Yeah. So up till now, more than 150,000 participants have received some form of payout pension from the system. And in total, we're talking about an amount of money of over 2 billion RON. And about half that amount, a bit less than half that amount, was only last year. Of course, what you see is that we're still in the build-up phase. The system was introduced in 2008, so people are contributing. So the amount of people that reach pensioners' age is still relatively small. This will grow in time. But already 150,000 participants have received payout from the pension funds. And apart from reaching pension age, the other moment you can get your pension paid is when you are confronted with invalidity, let's say. So the law provides that when you become you have incapacity to work, you can get your pension paid as an invalidity pension. So that's actually quite a significant amount of the payments made so far also related to this.
What is Pillar 2's outlook in 2024, given the current macroeconomic context?
Yes, I think first of all, apart from the macroeconomic context, it's good to point out that as of the beginning of this year, the legislation changed, or the contribution changed. So the contribution percentage of Pillar 2 went up from 3.75% to 4.75%. So that basically means that the amount that Romanians will save in their Pillar 2 pension will increase, just because a larger part of their salary will be converted into units for their pension fund. So I think from that perspective, that's a big change. That's an important change, because in the end, the idea is that the pension at the end of the line, when you reach the pensioner's age, is sufficient to really be meaningful to provide you a meaningful income going forward. The original law said that it would grow to 6% contribution. We're now moved from 3.75 to 4.75%, so we're getting closer to that threshold. And I think that's a very important change for 2024. The macroeconomic context, again, for the bond markets, we are cautiously optimistic, as I explained before. If we look at the equity markets, well, if you follow the news, not only in Romania, but also globally, the equity markets are at really high levels, all-time highs in some cases. So it's unrealistic to expect a similar return like last year, given where the prices are right now. At the same time, we also don't see very much dark clouds on the horizon. So I'm not here to give investment advice. I cannot predict the future. I want to emphasize that. Risks could be in for a bit more volatility. But overall, I also don't expect super big shocks to the markets. But yeah, with local elections, global elections, particularly India, US, with an open economy as the Romanian economy is, what happens in Europe, what happens in the US does impact also the Romanian economy. So it's also a bit of a hard year to predict this year. But the increase in contributions is definitely a positive development for the participants and for the system. Bond markets are still in very good shape. So overall, I would say cautiously optimistic is the sentiment.
What does the contribution increase mean for the Pillar 2 funds for participants and for the companies, for the stock exchange?
Yes. So as I mentioned, the increase in contribution will mean more money flowing into everybody's P2 account. And when I say everybody who has a P2 account, those are 8.1 million at the moment who have an account. There are a few categories of food processing industries which can opt out of the P2 system. So yeah, they don't benefit if they opt out. For those who have opted in, of course, they still benefit. Having a larger amount of funds flowing into the savings account, which we then invest, on which we make returns. Pension at the end is, well, it's about an increase of 25% in contribution. So essentially your fund grows 25% faster from here on out, which means that the pension you expect to receive at the end also goes up compared to if you would analyze it with the previous contribution. So that's for the participants a very clear impact. If you look at the investment side, so all that money that flows in needs to be invested. So at the moment, the Romanian government bonds, the Bucharest Stock Exchange still provide us ample opportunity to invest that money. But if we extend it beyond this year and we look a number of years ahead, you do start to see that the large amount of funds flowing in do mean that, for instance, liquidity on the Bucharest Stock Exchange comes under pressure because there's quite a lot of money to invest. And in the end, yes, if there's no new companies being listed, if there's no increase in liquidity on the stock market, that can in time become an issue. And in time, I'm not talking 2024, but it's also not 10 years away. So this is one of the things we're looking at as an industry also, that expected is that in the coming 5 years, the total amount of assets that needs to be invested will double from the increased contributions, from investment returns. And yeah, we're also looking for Bucharest Stock Exchange regulators to help to grow the financial market, because if we get new listings or companies that are already listed increase their free float, so bring more of their stocks to the market, that would really help. At the same time, we also look abroad. So right now, more than 90% of our funds is essentially invested in Romania, and we prefer that. But in the end, yes, if there are no investment opportunities in Romania, you might end up looking abroad as well. but we do that very cautiously.
Speaking of, we say that private pensions funds have become too big for the local stock market. Will it become necessary for Pillar 2 funds to invest more on the foreign companies markets? And what are the requirements to say so?
No, I think the necessity is not yet there, but as I explained, in time it might get more stringent, but that also depends on how the Romanian financial markets will develop. I think there's still a lot of space for companies already listed to increase their free float, for new companies to come to the stock exchange. There are corporate bond markets in Romania that still can be developed. So I think, it's a question if the financial markets can keep pace in the end with the growth of the pension fund assets. So time will tell. But I do think there's still opportunity to invest more. And I think also the current investment norms that we have, so where we are allowed to invest based on the laws and regulations put in place, they are very good because they provide security and make sure that the investments are done safely and with an eye on a stable return. But at the same time, as the funds grow, we might look at having discussions about making the norms a bit more flexible, which could allow us to invest a bit more abroad or in other types of instruments within Romania. And you could think of, there's a lot of talk about infrastructure projects, for instance, in Romania. An infrastructure project is by nature, because it's a long-term project, something that would fit the investment profile of a pension fund very well, because that's also a long-term investment profile. But for that to materialize, you would really need some changes in legislation, and currently there are no projects like that on the table. So I think this is a discussion that we need to have starting today with the regulators, with the markets for the coming 2-3 years, to make sure that we are able to continue to invest and also help grow Romania in more ways than by investing the money in the country in a productive way.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Witteveen, thank you very much for your presence, and the invitation remains open for another time.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Have a great day.
For us too. Ladies and gentlemen, I conclude today's opening. I spoke with GERKE WITTEVEEN, CEO of NN Pensii. Thanks for your attention. See you next time. Have a profitable trading session.
Știu ce spun.
Zelenski l-a schimbat pe generalul Zaluzhny de la conducerea armatei.
Era un posibil contracandidat. A ieșit bine pentru Zelenski.
Știu ce te interesează.
Peste 4500 de joburi au fost tăiate din cauza inteligenței artificiale.
Îi ai pe oameni de 50-60 de ani, nici nu știu să țină telefonul ăsta în mână.
De ce e prea târziu să înveți în viață?
Hai să nu mai vorbim SF-uri.
Știu cum să te fac curios.
România intră în realitatea virtuală de la Apple.
E foarte greu să cred că o să văd populație din România cu casca pe cap. Dovadă de curaj enorm la noi.
Știu cum să te emoționezi.
Ecuador permite eutanasierea pacienților care suferă de o boală incurabilă. Nu poți să decizi dacă azi viața ta nu mai are niciun sens. Poate mâine o să aibă tot sensul din lume.
Știu să conving. Să înceapă marea comasare. Este anunțul făcut de președintele Iohannis.
Noi l-am ales, dar de câte ori l-ai văzut tu să iasă la o conferință de presă, și să dea un interviu pe bun.
Știu să câștig.
Acum a rămas cine bea acum?
Bem cu juriu
Știu, deci știi.